Und pünktlich Viertel vor 5 begrüße
We are
ich
on
Sie alle
time,
wieder
a
herzlich
quarter to
willkommen
5.
zu unserem Nachmittag
I would like
hier
to
auf
welcome
der
you back to
Universitätstagung des
our
DAAD. Ich freue
afternoon
mich,
of the
wieder viele Gesichter
diversity
zu sehen, die langsam
meeting of
sozusagen
the
die Namen
DAAD. It's good
und
to
im
have all
Vorfeld
the
hier
faces back
in den
here,
Raum auf die digitale Bühne in das Plenumraum.
and
Schön, dass Sie wieder mit
good to
dabei
see you
sind
back
nach
on
dieser
the digital
Workshop-Session, wo
stage.
es doch einiges
Good to
zu
have you back
besprechen
after
gab
the
in
workshops
12 ganz
where we had
unterschiedlichen
lots of
Workshops und
topics
jeder
to
Workshop war spannender als der
discuss,
andere.
12
Also
different
bin mir
workshops,
sicher, Sie
and
hatten
all
eine
of them
gute
were
Zeit
highly
und wir machen jetzt
exciting.
thematisch
And I think
weiter.
we all had a good
Herzlich
time.
willkommen zurück,
And
denn wir kommen in unserer
welcome
Zeit der
back here.
Podiumsdiskussion mit der
We are
großen
coming to
Leitfrage:
the panel
Wie können
discussion, and the
Hochschulen
question is, how
internationalisieren,
can higher
chancengerecht
education
gestalten? Und dafür
institutions
übergebe ich jetzt für die
shape
Moderation an die Moderatorin
internationalization
der
to provide equal
DAAD-Abteilung. Ich erkenne
opportunities?
hierbei
And
uns
I will
Dr.
hand
Birgit
over to
Klüsener. Frau
Dr.
Klüsener, die
Birgit
Bühne
Klüsener.
und das
She
Mikro
is the
gehört Ihnen.
organizer on
Ja,
behalf
ganz
of
herzlichen
the
Dank, Frau
AAD. You
Galles.
have the floor.
Ich möchte Sie auch
Thank you,
nochmal
Ms.
ganz herzlich zu
Gallis.
unserer
I would
Podiumsdiskussion
also like to
begrüßen.
welcome
Ich
you
freue
to
mich vor
our
allen
panel
Dingen, Ihnen
discussion.
die Gäste
And
auf
I
unserer
am very
virtuellen Bühne
pleased
vorstellen
to
zu können.
present our guests
Das
to
sind
you
zum
on
einen
our
Frau
virtual
Professor Angela
stage.
Ittel,
Professor
Präsidentin
Angela
der
Ittel,
Technischen
the
Universität
president of
Braunschweig.
the
Ich glaube, wir werden
Technical
sie gleich auch auf
University
dem
of
Bild sehen.
Braunschweig, and we
Die
will be able to see
blickt also heute
her
auf das
video
Thema
too.
aus Sicht einer
And
Hochschulleitung.
she will
Wir
talk about
haben
the topic
Herrn
from the
Kumar Ashish
perspective
heute
of
auf der
the
Bühne. Er ist
direction
Sprecher des
of a
Bundesverbands
university. Then we
ausländischer
have Kumar
Studierender e.V.
Ashish. He
Er bringt also
is
den Blickwinkel der
the
ausländischen
representative of
Studierenden
the
mit.
Federal
Wir haben
Association of Foreign
Dennis Grimm auf
Students,
der
so he
Bühne.
is
Er ist
talking on
Mitbegründer
behalf of
von
the foreign
Speed Up Buddy.
students.
Was
Then Dennis
Speed Up
Grimm,
Buddy
he
macht,
is
werden wir gleich lernen.
talking
Es ist
on
ein
behalf of the
Mentoring-Programm
Speed
für
Up Buddies,
ErstakademikerInnen.
and
Dann haben wir
it
Herrn
is a
Jens
mentoring program
Kaffenberger auf der
for
Bühne.
first generation
Er ist
academics.
Leiter der
Then we have
Informations- und
Jens
Beratungsstelle
Kaffenberger
Studium
here.
und
He
Behinderung.
is
Und Sie
representing
freuen uns auch über
the
BRD-Kollegin
student
Frauke
union,
Stebner.
and Frauke
Sie arbeitet
Stebner.
im
She is my
Referat IU
DAAD
02,
colleague.
das hat den
She
griffigen
works
Namen
in the
Erasmus Plus
field of
Leitaktion 1,
Erasmus Plus
Mobilität von
pipeline
Einzelpersonen.
activity
Und
mobility of
was ganz
individual
Besonderes, wir haben
persons.
ja einen
And
freien
a
Stuhl
special
heute,
thing, we
einen
have an
virtuellen
empty
freien
chair, a
Stuhl. Wir machen
virtual
gleich
empty chair,
einige Fragerunden
and we will have
und
some rounds of
Studentinnen und
questions,
Studenten können
and
sich zu Wort melden. Sie
students
können an der
can raise
Podiumsdiskussion
their
teilnehmen.
hands
Wenn
and
Sie
they
das
can
machen wollen, heben Sie einfach die Hand.
participate in the
Die
panel.
Kolleginnen und
If you want to
Kollegen
do
im
so, you can
Hintergrund in
just
der
raise
Technik
your
werden Sie dann auf
hand.
die Bühne heben
And the
bis zur
technical
nächsten Fragerunde.
experts
Wenn
in
dann
the
eine neue
background will put
Frage
you on
gestellt wird und
stage.
jemand anders
And when
teilnehmen
there
möchte,
is
wird
a
dann die
new
nächste
question
Person
and
mit auf
someone
die
else
Bühne
would like to
gebracht. In den
participate,
ersten
the
40
next
Minuten wollen
person
wir das
is
wirklich exklusiv
invited
für
to the stage.
Studentinnen und
So
Studenten
in the first
bereithalten
round,
und
we would
später
like
dann
to
vielleicht auch, wenn
reserve
wir die
this
Zeit haben,
exclusively
die
for
Bühne
students.
öffnen.
And later,
Ja, wir
if we
haben
still have time,
heute
we
nur
will
eine
open
Stunde,
the
die
stage
Zeit
for
vergeht
others.
ganz
We only
schnell.
have 1 hour.
Deshalb würde ich sagen,
Time
starten
is
wir auch
passing
direkt,
fast,
damit
and
wir
this is
möglichst viele Themen auch
why I would
ansprechen
like to
können.
say that we should
Ähm,
start right away so
Wir haben
we can
vorhin schon eine
address
ganze Reihe
many
von
different issues.
Erfahrungsberichten
We
gehört
have
von
heard
Studierenden,
different
die auf dem Weg ins
testimonials
Ausland ganz
of
unterschiedliche
students
Hürden
who
zum
had
Teil
different
ja, nehmen
experiences
mussten, um ihren
and had to
Auslandsaufenthalt
take
zu
certain
bewerkstelligen.
hurdles on
Herr
their
Grimm,
way
vielleicht
abroad.
starten wir mal mit Ihnen.
So,
Auch Sie sind Erstakademiker, waren
um,
der Erste in Ihrer Familie, der
Mr.
studiert
Grimm,
hat.
maybe we can
Sie
start
haben
with you.
Teil
You
Ihres
are
Studiums eben im
also a
Ausland
first
verbracht.
generation
Ich weiß
academic.
nicht, ob
You
Sie den
spent
Berichten schon
part
vorhin
of
folgen
your
konnten.
studies
Wenn ja,
abroad.
haben Sie sich in den Berichten wiedergefunden
Did you
und
have the chance
wie
to
hat Ihr
follow
Hintergrund
the
als
reports, and
Erstakademiker
did you
Ihren Weg
feel
ins Ausland beeinflusst? Ich nehme an,
reflected
es hat Sie
and
beeinflusst, sonst hätten Sie
represented
nicht
in
Speed Up
those
Buddy gegründet.
testimonials? Well, you
Absolut,
have
ja. Hallo
generated
erstmal.
and
Vielen Dank für die
founded
Einladung.
Speed Up Buddy.
Und ist genau so,
Thank
denn
you
die
very
hatten die
much.
Vorredner jetzt
Yes.
nicht alle
I
aktiv
did not have
verfolgen
the
können.
opportunity
Ich kann Ihnen aber
to
gerne auf den
listen to
zweiten Teil
all
der
my
Frage
previous
antworten und
speakers, but I
eins
can
ist ziemlich klar.
answer the second
Für mich
half of the
persönlich
question and
war
talk about
das
my own
Auslandssemester sehr,
experience.
sehr prägend.
My
Nicht
semester
nur
abroad
von dem, was
really
ich
shaped
mitgenommen habe
me
von
a
der
lot,
Universität,
not
sondern
only
auch
when it
gerade auf dem
comes to the
persönlichen Level.
academic
Also
studies, but also when it
Hochschulsprachlich
comes
einfach
to
zwischendurch
personal
ist es extrem
experiences.
interessant. Ich glaube,
With respect
wenn ich
to the language
zurückblicke
and my
auf das,
personal
was in den letzten
development, a
2,5, 3
lot has
Jahren so
changed
passiert
in
ist,
the
als ich aus dem
past
Bachelor
2 or 3 years
rausgegangen bin,
after leaving the
zum anschließenden
bachelor's
Master,
degree
dann war das
and
aus dem, was ich aus dem Bachelor gemacht habe, kein
graduated
Nachteil für
in my
mich, weil ich auf jeden
master's.
Fall ich einfach
Well,
ganz neue
I gained
Perspektiven,
so
ganz neue
much
Menschen, ganz neue
experience
kulturelle
because I
Hintergründe
got
kennenlernen
new
durfte.
perspectives. I
Und
had the
deswegen war
chance to
das
meet
ein
new
sehr, sehr prägender
people,
Moment
new
meiner studentischen
um,
Laufbahn.
new circumstances,
wir
and
haben
that
ja
really
anscheinend
shaped
das
me
Bedürfnis
in my
gesehen, eine
academic career.
Initiative zu gründen wie Speed
And
Up,
you
wo
saw
widmen sich ja der
the
Beratung
need
von
to
ErstakademikerInnen.
develop an
In
initiative,
den
and
Gesprächen,
you
die Sie
are
führen mit
supporting
Studierenden,
first-generation
welche
academics.
Nachfrage gibt es denn in der
You
Gruppe der
talk to students, and
Erstakkademiker
what kind of
und
demands
wo
and
setzen Sie
needs
an,
do you
die
see
Studierenden zu
among
unterstützen?
those people, and where do you start to
Gerne.
support
Also
these
die
students?
Bedarfe sind natürlich sehr,
Of
sehr
course,
komplex beziehungsweise
there
sehr, sehr
is
individuell.
very individual
Grundsätzlich können Sie sich
demand, and it's
vorstellen,
highly
dass
complex.
wenn Sie als erste
Basically,
Person in Ihrer
you know,
Familie
if you are the
studieren,
first person in your
zum
family
einen
to go to
natürlich das
university,
Studium
of
im eigenen
course,
Land bzw. seiner eigenen Universität schon eine große
uh,
Herausforderung ist. Und
the
wenn Sie dann noch einen
challenge, the
draufsetzen
greatest
möchten und sagen,
challenge
okay, ich will sogar noch
is
ins
to
Ausland,
study in your own
dann
country.
ist
And
das
if
für
you want
viele
to
im ersten
add
Schritt
something
erstmal
by going
überfordert bis
abroad,
gar nicht
then
möglich.
this is overwhelming
Und es
and
hat halt
sometimes
ganz,
even
ganz
impossible for
diverse
people to
und viele
understand.
verschiedene
And
Facetten,
there
die
are many
natürlich
facets,
auch super
many
individuell sind, wie gerade schon
aspects to
gesagt,
it,
aber
and
vor
they
allem
are
ist es
very
knapp.
individual.
Und dann setzen
However,
Sie halt an,
and this is where
wie bereits
we
besprochen,
start
in dem
our
Alter und
approach.
in dieser
At
Situation
that
einfach jemanden, mit
age
dem Sie
and in
austauschen
this
können.
situation,
Und da
they
geht es
need
um die
someone to
persönliche
talk to.
Weiterentwicklung, also
It is about
Ermutigung
personal
beispielsweise,
developments,
dass man einfach sagt, okay, es
encouraging
ist machbar,
people.
das
You
kriegst
need
du
to
hin,
say, this is
von
feasible,
deinen
you can
Kompetenzen als
achieve
Mensch.
that,
Und darüber
you have
hinaus geht
these
es natürlich auch
competences as a
darum,
human being,
kann ich
and
mir
in
das eigentlich
addition to that,
leisten?
how can I
Ja,
actually
weil ganz oft
afford
natürlich
to
der,
do
der
that?
Punkt kommt,
Because very
von zu
often
Hause
the
ist
point
vielleicht
is,
nicht so viel
okay,
Verständnis
I
oder Support da,
don't
gerade
have
finanziell ist es
any
schwierig.
understanding
Wir
or
kriegen gerade das
support,
Studium
and we
in
don't have
Deutschland
any
hin,
financial
jetzt willst du auch noch
means.
ins
We
Ausland,
can
wie machen wir das?
hardly
Und es gibt
manage
ganz,
to
ganz viele
cover the cost
Fragezeichen.
for your
Und
studies
unser
here in
Ansatz ist
Germany,
da,
and now you want
wir
to go abroad.
neben dem
So,
One-on-One-Mentoring, also
in
1:1
addition to
Mentoring,
the
wo ein
one-to-one
Mentee, also eine
mentoring,
studierende Person
where
im
we have
Ausland,
one
ein Mentor zur
mentor
Seite gestellt
from
bekommt,
Germany
gleichzeitig
who
auch
will
der
get a
Community
mentor.
anbieten.
And
Diese
we
Community, da
also
können wir gerne gleich auch nochmal
provide a
drauf
community,
eingehen,
and we can
wo wir
talk
halt
about this
einfach die
community at
Studierenden
a
die
later
Möglichkeit geben,
stage. We
auszutauschen.
give students the
Bedeutet,
possibility
ja,
to
dass es zum
exchange
Beispiel
ideas.
ganz,
For
ganz viele
example,
gibt,
on
die
the
Fragen schreiben,
DAAD,
wie
there are
bewirbt man sich,
all
was
kinds
ist bei
of
der
questions. How do
Bewerbungsgespräch,
you
welche
apply? What
Spielregeln
do
gibt
you
es
need to keep
eigentlich?
in mind
War
when
jemand schon
applying?
mal
What kind of
in
grants are there? Have you
Barcelona
ever
zum
been
Beispiel
to
vor Ort?
Brussels? Have you ever
Und
been to
wir
Milan?
bieten dementsprechend halt einfach eine
And
Community,
we
die sehr
provide a
viele Fragezeichen
community
löst und
that can answer
sehr
lots of
viele Leute
questions, and
enabled oder zu den
many
Leuten
people are
ermöglicht.
enabled to
Ja,
take this
vielen Dank.
step.
Also ein richtig ein Netzwerk aufzubauen
aufzubauen,
und
you
das auch
very much.
unterstütze ich.
So building
Und
up
also ich
a
kann das sehr gut
supporting
nachvollziehen. Ich
network.
bin
I
selber
can fully understand that.
Erstakademikerin und
I am
ich
a
habe mich auch
first
erst als
generation
Postdoc ins
student
Ausland
as
getraut
well.
und nicht als
And only
Studierende.
when I did
Da
my
hatte ich
PhD
eben
did
dieses
I dare
Netzwerk
to go
nicht
abroad, and
und
not
bin erst
earlier on. And I
später
didn't
durch
have this
meine
network.
Hochschullehrer
At
auf
a later stage,
Finanzierungsmöglichkeiten
my
gestoßen. Ja, also nochmal
university
ganz vielen Dank für
teachers
Ihren
pointed
Beitrag und
out
vor
some
allem für die
financing
Initiative.
possibilities. Thank you
Herr
very much for
Ashish,
presenting your initiative.
Ihr
Mr.
Bild sieht gerade ein
Ashish,
bisschen eingefroren aus, aber ich hoffe, Sie können uns
your
hören.
image is a little
Sie
frozen, but
sind
I hope
Sprecher
you
des
can hear us.
Bundesverbands
You
ausländischer
represent
Studierender.
the Federal
Vielleicht für
Association of
diejenigen von
Foreign
uns,
Students.
die den
For those
Bundesverband
of us
ausländischer Studierender noch nicht so
who
gut kennen,
don't know this
welche
Federal
Ziele
Association of
verfolgen
Foreign
Sie
Students, what are your
ja, wie machen
aims,
Sie das?
and
Wofür setzen Sie
how
sich
do you
ein?
achieve your aims, and what is your mission?
Danke, Frau Klüsener, für die Frage und danke auch für die
Thank you,
Einladung.
Ms. Klüsener, for the question, and thank you for the
Bundesverband
invitation.
für ausländische Studierende und ist
So,
was
the
seit
Federal
4 Jahren
Association of
seit
Foreign
Anfang
Students, what are we?
2019
Since
und normalerweise
2019, I've
was
been
ist
working for
AU
that. And what
für
do we
alle
actually
ausländische
do?
Studierende und
So,
auch
it
die
is
Studierende von
an
Migration,
organization for all international
Hintergrund
students and
und
for students with a migration
allgegenwärtige
background.
ökonomische, gesellschaftliche, soziale oder
And
kulturelle Situation
it is
zu
to
verbessern,
help
besonders für ausländische
and to support
Studierende.
their economic,
Man
their
kann so sagen,
social,
für die
and financial
strukturelle
situation. So,
Benachteiligung zu
structural
bekämpfen
disadvantages should be balanced
und
out,
auch kann man sagen, die
and
Integration in die
we
Lebensraum der
help
Hochschule und die Gesellschaft zu
to
fördern.
help them to
Ja,
integrate
wir,
in the
was als
academic
Institut macht das seit 25 Jahren
situation and in the
und
society.
ja,
So this
weltweit
association has been in place
mehr
for
als
25
30
years,
Mitglieder Hochschule in ganz Deutschland
and we
und
have many
nicht nur
universities
Italien,
represented in our
aber auch aus Deutschland.
organization.
Wir haben versucht,
Germany,
mit
in Germany, we have tried
Botschaft zu kontaktieren für
to
die
contact
Situation für
embassies
Studierende zu verbessern.
in order to improve the
Vielen
academic
Dank. Sie haben
situation
gerade
of
das Thema
students.
strukturelle Benachteiligung
You talked
angesprochen.
about structural
Wo sehen Sie denn
disadvantages.
strukturelle
Where do
Benachteiligung
you
für
think
ausländische
are
Studierende an
structural
Hochschulen?
disadvantages for
Ja, und
international
auch insgesamt
students
in der
at
Gesellschaft.
German universities and in society as a
Ja,
whole?
es ist unterschiedlich. is while
it
Weil
differs.
es ist so, dass mit der Situation zum Beispiel in
For example,
Covid-Zeit oder
during
nach
COVID
Covid, was haben
or
wir
after COVID,
gefunden
we found the following situation.
mit dem Ausländerinnen zum Beispiel, das ist mit dem Visumtermin für die Visumverlängerung.
It was difficult to meet the requirements for the extension of visas, and this is very time consuming, so it's very hard for students. So this is not something we've been doing for 10 years or 5 years. Everything we do depends from year to year. So we have students from Iran, Afghanistan, and they have certain difficulties, and sometimes it's the financial support, but there are always challenges everywhere. You've just mentioned bureaucracy. And at lunchtime, we heard from a series of German students that there is also a great level of bureaucracy when going abroad. And this is a topic we need to deal with separately. How can processes be streamlined, simplified for students? Thank you very much. Mr. Kaffenberger.
Sie sind heute auch schon seit einiger Zeit mit in der Veranstaltung. Wir
You
haben
have
einen
been
Erfahrungsbericht gehört,
with
einer
us for quite
Studentin,
some time,
die mit
and we
chronischer
have
Erkrankung ins
heard
Ausland gegangen ist.
testimonial of a person who was abroad with a chronic
Informationsberatung,
disease,
Behinderung.
and you are
Wie
in
sehr ist
charge of
internationale
the
Mobilität überhaupt ein Thema bei Ihren
Student Union,
Beratungsgesprächen?
providing
Und,
support
welche Aspekte
for
werden von den
such
Studierenden,
students.
angesprochen? Was sind da die
What do you do,
Hauptthemen,
and
die
what
im
are the
Interview besprochen
aspects that the students mention? What are the main topics they talk about?
Sie sind auch stumm geschaltet. Sie müssen
You are
sich erst
still
noch mal
muted. Please
freischalten.
unmute your microphone.
Wunderbar. Genau. Auch von meiner Seite aus. Hallo.
Hello,
Ja,
everybody.
IBS, wir bieten
IBS.
Interessenvertretung, aber
We
eben auch
represent people's
Information,
interest, but we also
Beratung und
provide
Weiterbildung
information and further
auch,
training,
für Studierende, das
also for
eher
students.
subsidiär, ne? Also
Well,
die
only
erste Phase
subsidiarily,
ja schon die Hochschulen,
of
aber
course,
wenn es keine Angebote
it
gibt,
is
bieten
mainly
Berater
the
dazu auch.
universities who need to do this job, but if there is no information, we
Studienbildung in den Hochschulen.
complement them,
Und wenn sich
and
jetzt
we
Studierende an
help
uns
students
wenden, sind
with
dankbar
disabilities
und,
and
bekommen
illnesses. So
Informationen
the
über
question
auch
is, where do I
finanzielle
find
Empfehlungen, wie
information?
der Bedarf,
How
wie
do I
sichere
finance the
medizinische
demands that I have
Versorgung in
because
Deutschland
I
etc.
have an
dazu gibt.
illness?
Diese Informationen auch auf
And
unserer Website zu
so
finden. Da
a
kann man
lot
sich
of
zu
information
Gesprächen
can
melden,
already be found on our
und
website
beraten
on these
auch
topics.
dazu
And we
werden.
also provide
Dazu rufen Sie
information
über Weiterbildungsbeauftragte
complementing
an, wenn Sie
universities. We
komplexe
also
Fragen
offer
wie,
further training
sozialrechtliche
for
Ansprüche
officers
internationalen
who are
Studierenden
dealing with
gewährleisten.
legal
Das,
claims of
auch,
international students,
schwierige Fragen zu klären.
and we try to solve
Ja, wir
difficult
haben ja heute in diesem
questions.
Beispiel, was wir gehört haben, da ging es
Today
um
we heard an
Medikamentenversorgung,
example.
das
Well, it was
sichergestellt werden
about
im
the
Ausland.
administration of
Wer
medication. How can
tritt
that be
für die
guaranteed?
Zusatzkosten ein?
And who is
Werden
covering the
rechtliche
additional
Heimatflüge
costs? How do
ermöglicht?
flights back
Als DAAD
home
versuchen wir selber da Unterstützung
get
den
covered?
Stipendiaten zu liefern.
And
darüber diskutieren,
we
ob das
might
reicht oder ob
offer
man mehr
support for
machen, auch
our
finanziell mehr zur Verfügung stellen
students,
müsste. Wo sehen
or
Sie denn
if
in Ihren
additional
Beratungsgesprächen
financial
auch noch
support needs to
Stellschrauben,
be provided. What do you
damit
think
den
can
Studierenden der
still
Weg
be
ins
done
Ausland besser
so
ermöglicht
that
werden kann? Hier gilt ja
students
immer noch,
will
dass
have it
Studierende mit
easier to go
Behinderung und chronischer
abroad?
Erkrankung
Students with
ein Mutmaß
disabilities
deutlich
and chronic
unterrepräsentiert
diseases,
sind,
you
wenn es
know,
die
that is a group
Auslandsmobilität
that is
geht.
especially
Das wäre jetzt auch meine
underrepresented
Vermutung oder
in
meine Wahrnehmung,
studies
dass es ein
abroad.
bisschen
Yes, I
unterrepräsentiert ist. Tatsächlich
assume
gibt
and
es
I
hier noch
perceive
zwei
that they are
Hürden, die wir vielleicht
underrepresented.
genauer
There are
Das
two
eine ist sozusagen
barriers
eine
that I would like to
sozialrechtliche Hürde, die
mention.
ich einfach
One
mal
of them is the
erwähne,
social
beispielsweise
and a
einen
legal
Studierenden
barrier.
der Eingliederungshilfe ist, also
Someone who
Assistenzbedarf,
needs
persönliche Assistenz beziehen,
assistance
Assistenzgebrauch,
in
dann
order
ist die
to
Leistung eine
get
Messesleistung,
integrated,
die
and
die
then
Assistenz
is
ein
that
Pflichtpraktikum
this
mache
is
oder der
a
Auslandssemester vorgeschrieben ist,
non-compulsory
dann habe ich gute Chancen, dass die Finanzierung der
financial
Assistenz auch im
support.
Ausland
But
auch
if
überwiegen
the
kann.
student
Wenn
has
das
to
nicht der
do
Fall
an
ist,
internship,
dann
for
muss ich
example, and
mehr
it's part of the
abgeben
studies,
entsprechend.
then
Das zieht
the
sich
costs are
durch weiter bei
covered.
der Pflege
And
und
you
so
will
weiter.
find that
Das ist natürlich
everywhere
eine
in all the
enorme Hürde,
fields.
die
caregiving, and this is a major hurdle, and we can all understand that. Also for limited stays abroad, we need to find financing for that. Mobility, student mobility is to do with social mobility, and for international experiences, studies abroad that are not compulsory, this is something we don't cover. We can't say that anymore. The second point I would like to mention today is the organizational effort that is required. I don't want to discourage people, and we got a lot of encouragement earlier today. However, the organizational effort is really immense. And in the keynote, we also heard that the students who don't have any disabilities and want to go abroad, financing, to attend a host university, and support for bureaucracy. This is something we would really need. So you need to organize a lot, and this is really a lot of work they need to do. So we need to provide support. That is the essence. We need to provide support by supporting the families, social networks. We need to provide information centers, and we need to provide target group specific information and publish testimonials. I think that is all very important. Thank you very much. Well, we still have a lot on our agenda as the DAAD to support the students. Professor Ittel, we already heard internationalization, international mobility. This is to do with additional costs. Equal opportunities in this context is very important, because if you do not only want to provide mobility abroad to a limited group, what possibilities are there to create equal opportunities for mobility? As a university, you have certain demands, certain requirements, things that you want to achieve, and then on the other hand, you are facing certain realities. What is your perspective? Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me. Okay, that's part of my job, to be drawn between two extremes. But when it comes to internationalization, we talked about mobility, student mobility. That is very important. This is the first thing we think about when we talk about internationalization. But when talking about internationalization of university courses, there are other possibilities to gain international experience. This is to do with shared classrooms, that the teachers get together from teachers of other countries and you give your classes together. In my former job, I spent a lot of time on an initiative for the internationalization of curriculums. It's not only to learn in English, but also to gain experience from other countries and integrate it in your curriculum. It's a large catalog of measures. So we call this internationalization at home. This is not always in the focus when talking about mobility. However, this is increasingly done by universities so that people get the opportunity to gain international experience, although they are not capable of traveling anywhere. So this is another possibility. Of course, what you have just mentioned and what we've been discussing, of course, there needs to be support. We need to provide information and financial support. It is not always possible to make sure at universities that there are such competences, not only for people who provide information, but also university teachers. Well, you just mentioned you were informed that there are funding possibilities. Not everyone knows that. There are different levers that you can use in order to create equal opportunities.
verschiedene Bausteine, die Sie an der
So
Hochschule
there are different
zusammensetzen müssen,
elements
damit
that you
das
need to
Gesamtbild dann
combine
später passt.
so that the overall
Wenn
picture
meine
really
Kollegen richtig
fits.
gebrieft haben, durchlaufen Sie
If
gerade an Ihrer
my
Universität den
colleagues have
dritten
informed me
Auditprozess
correctly,
der
you are going
Hochschulrektorenkonferenz zur
through the third
Internationalisierung der
audit
Hochschulen.
process
Und
in
ja, da stellt
the
uns grundsätzlich die
internationalization of
Frage,
universities
inwiefern das
at
Thema
your university. And the question is,
Chancengerechtigkeit und Diversität
equal
in der
opportunities and
Internationalisierung dabei eine
diversity
Rolle
in
spielt. Also wird das adressiert?
internationalization. Does it play a role? Is it addressed? Yes, we are going through the third process. I am a big fan of this audit, and I am very happy that the Technical University of Braunschweig, at which I have only worked very little, that this is going through this university for the third time, and it is the only university in Germany who is undergoing this audit for the third time, and I am very pleased to be in this position. Internationalization nowadays has nothing to do with what we talked about a few years ago. So we need to adjust and we need to restructure internationalization and diversity as well as equal opportunities. To what extent do they play a role? Well, internationalization is only roughly dealt with. Everything is called internationalization, but other topics are related. In this audit, we have explicitly focused on measures. Internationalization at home, as I mentioned, is one of them. So providing international experience without going abroad, but we also provide information, and this is also audited. We take a look at the target groups. Where is the demand of these target groups? And Mr. Grimm, you mentioned the peer-to-peer approach. Well, student consulting, no matter if it's first generation academics, but you have to have a different approach. We also have training sessions for our teachers or informational events for them, so they get a more detailed perspective on how to encourage students and achieve that. Thank you very much. So diversity, well, for that we have a different set of measures. And this is a great task at university and many elements that have to go hand in hand with each other. We heard that encouragement, positive reports, they also play a major role. And when it comes to testimonials, the Erasmus program was mentioned many times. Many students went abroad with Erasmus and they reported about their experiences. Ms. Stebner, I think you have been dealing with inclusion and diversity for quite some time in the Erasmus context, more than we did at DAAD. So it was a best practice example. So for us, it is quite exciting to hear about the Erasmus Plus program. So what do they do to do exchanges more inclusively? Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here today and report about that. What does the Erasmus program do? And in order to answer your question, I have to go back in time. The European Commission has already decided for the new generation 2021 to have a high horizontal priority as diversity, to have equal opportunities from 2021 till the end of the program generation. It is an ongoing process that cannot be implemented overnight. That means inclusion, diversity, from youth to education at schools and tertiary education. It needs to be implemented at all the levels, and it starts with the expert selection and And as a consequence, this has an effect on the individual mobility. The classic Erasmus mobility abroad, I think quite a few measures have already been taken and implemented. For example, the minimum stay abroad is reduced. It used to be 3 months, and now students can go abroad for 2 months. We have blended formats. Since 2021, it is possible to only go 5 to 30 days abroad to the host university to study there and to the rest virtually from your own country. That is highly attractive for students who have to look after family members, or if it's impossible in a certain university course to go abroad. So this is quite attractive. It is not limited to this. Financial support is also an important aspect. We've already talked about that. It is highly important in many areas, and this is why we decided as early as last year to increase the individual grant rates since 2021. So we have increased it by up to 160 euro more per month, so that the financial incentive is greater and more students can participate. We also grant certain top-up amounts for certain target groups. We took a look at certain courses. We got together with experts, with our university coordinators, and we defined those target groups. So since the last project, students who go abroad with their children, or who have a disability or an illness, or first-generation students will be able to get an additional 50 euros per month under certain circumstances. It is not so easy to understand for all groups, but Mr. Grimm has already mentioned financing is an aspect for many students. Mr. Kaffenberger also mentioned that for participants with a disability, it is extremely difficult. So this group of students and employees can also receive special funding by sending assisting staff with them. Up to 15,000 euro can be paid. Certain cost categories for children can also be covered. And I think we have changed quite a bit in our program. So we have created more just opportunities. We try to keep a balance between very broad participation to make Erasmus as accessible as possible to as many students as possible, and a special funding for people with special needs and special demand for financing. We had 157 million euro that we spent in 2021, and more than 44,000 student grants were granted. I think we are going in the right direction. I think this is very encouraging and impressing. It is an encouragement for others also to adjust their financing. I think these discussions will continue at European level. This is an interim step that we have achieved, but it's not the final goal yet. And this is where the discussion is going to continue. We are also going to open the panel for students. So one question for everyone. Maybe one of you would like to comment on that. What can and should universities do in order to give equal opportunities for internationalization? What do you support, or how do you support? Would you like to comment on that? Would you like to give an input? Who dares to make a statement? We will we will wait a little and see if someone has the courage to speak up. If not, we can also continue, but we would like to give you the opportunity.
Eine Handzeichen, genau.
genau.
I see a hand here.
Ja, Frau Guterres, Sie
Miss Gutierrez,
haben heute ja schon mal einen Erfahrungsbericht
you have
geliefert.
already
Also
given
freuen
a
wir uns jetzt noch mal von Ihnen zu
testimonial
hören.
today, and we are looking forward to your comment.
Ich weiß ein bisschen über das Thema Bürokratie.
Bureaucracy?
Also ich hatte schon oftmals das Problem gehabt,
I had the
dass ich
problem every
finde,
now and
dass es
then
nicht so viele
that
Informationen
there is
für
not
keine
so much
Europäer gibt.
information for
Zum
non-Europeans
Beispiel, ob
regarding
wenn man ein Auslandssemester macht, ob man
a
ein
semester
Visum
abroad,
beantragen
if you
muss
need to
oder
apply
nicht,
for a visa or
ob
not,
das Aufenthaltstitel in Deutschland
or
reicht. Ich
if
glaube, für solche
your
Fragen,
residence permit is sufficient.
dadurch, dass das Tendenz noch niedrig
Well,
ist,
there
dass
is
wir
a
also
low
nicht Europäer ins
tendency
Ausland gehen, wenn sie hier in Deutschland ein
for
Studium machen.
non-Europeans to come here
Ich
to
glaube,
Germany.
da fehlt noch viel
I think
Information.
a lot of information is lacking
Ich glaube,
here.
deswegen auch viele trauen sich nicht, zum
And
Beispiel ein Auslandssemester zu machen,
many
weil
don't
zum
dare to
Beispiel,
go
ich hatte den
abroad.
Fall, ich habe an meine Uni gefragt,
I had
ob
the
ich ein
case,
Visum für
you
Belgien
know, I
beantragen musste.
asked at my
Und
university if
mir
I had
gesagt,
to
dass
request a
sie
visa
das auf
for
jeden Fall
Belgium.
machen.
And they told me at my
Ich
university,
habe mich
yes,
mit dem
definitely. Then
Konsulat in
I
Verbindung
got in
gesetzt
touch
und
with the
mir das nach Belgien
consulate and they
gesagt.
said,
Und
yes, you
als
need to
ich
do
nach
it.
Belgien
And
kam
then I get to
und
Belgium
wurde mir gesagt, dass
and
ich
people told me
dies machen musste.
I didn't
Und
have to
ich
do
war
it.
so ein bisschen überrascht,
So I was
weil
quite
natürlich
surprised.
hat mir das viel Zeit gekostet
Of
und
course,
auch
it
viel
took a
Geld
lot of
gekostet.
time and
Und
it was very
ja,
expensive.
ich glaube, das ist wirklich, also es
Ja.
sollte Kohärenz zwischen den
So
beiden Parteien
there
geben,
should be more
weil
coherence between both
Ich
parties.
verstehe schon. Wir geben
I
Informationen
can
für
understand
Ausländer, die nach
that.
Deutschland
We
kommen. Das
give
gibt die
information
Initiative
for
Study in
people who
Germany.
come to
Wir geben
Germany.
Informationen
There
für
is information
deutsche
for
Studierende, die ins Ausland gehen.
those who study
Aber
here
es fehlt an
and
Informationen
Germans
für
who study
internationale
abroad, but
Studierende, die in
there is no
Deutschland sind
information
und im
for
Rahmen ihres
international
Studiums dann
students
auch ins
who
Ausland
are
gehen
here in
wollen.
Germany and
Da
want to
gibt
go
so ein bisschen
abroad.
eine
There
Informationslücke,
is
habe
a
ich
lack of
verstanden. Da muss man
information.
sich auch ein bisschen drum
And
kümmern,
we need
dass man da auch
to
Informationen
make sure
aufbereitet.
that we
Das
prepare
haben wir
information for
bislang, glaube ich,
that.
wirklich noch nicht so im
Well, we
Blickfeld
have
gehabt.
not
Es ist wichtig,
really
dass wir
done that
das
so far, and it
adressieren.
is very
Ganz
important
herzlichen
to
Dank.
address that. Thank you very
Herr
much.
Ashish.
Mr. Ashish, please.
Ja, ich möchte ein bisschen dazu sagen,
I would
weil
also like to add something.
es war im November in BMBF und zum Glück
In
ist aber auch in die letzte Zeit auch getroffen unsere
recently, I have
Minister Nancy
also
Frau Faeser und auch
met our
die
minister,
Minister
Mrs.
auch
Faisal,
unsere
and I had the opportunity to
Foreign Minister
meet the foreign minister.
zu treffen. Das ist echt, was Frau Guterres hat jetzt gerade gesagt.
What
Das ist nicht nur
Mrs.
die
Gutierrez
Fall
just
für
said is a
Ausland, weil
reality.
die Informationen man sollen
And this does not only
Uni
apply
kriegen,
to
aber
a
auch
semester
von Bundesland, zum
abroad. You
Beispiel
should
was
not
wir
only
von
get
Bundesland
information
in
from the
Germany,
universities, but
da
also
es
from
gibt auch nicht genug
federal
Information,
institutions. There's
dass
not enough
es eine
information
Ausländer
available,
besucht von Heimatland. Zum Beispiel,
and
es gibt gar
foreign
keine
students
Information
need this
in
information. For instance,
Germany
there is no
Webseite von
information
BMBF,
at all
dass
on the
warum
German
soll eine
site
Studie
of the Federal
bezahlen und warum
Ministry.
nur und warum ist es
So it is
weniger in
not
den weiteren
understandable why a student
oder
should pay
warum ist
different
es
fees in
und
different provinces.
zwischen
Sie
die
sprechen das Problem
Sprache
des
zu
föderalen Systems an. Das
So
ist
you
natürlich
are touching
von
upon the
Bundesland zu
problem of the
Bundesland unterschiedlich
federalism.
ist.
Of
Das
course,
wissen
we
wir, das
have
ist ein
different fees
großes
in the
Problem, gerade
different
wenn man sich aus dem
German
Ausland
provinces.
informieren
This is a
möchte
big
zu
problem,
Studienbedingungen
especially if
in
you're looking
Deutschland. Kann man
for
versuchen, da zu
information
helfen
from
mit Study
abroad
in Germany.
about
Es gibt zum
studying
Beispiel
in
My
Germany.
Guide,
With a study in
das
Germany, we're
zugeschnitten sein
trying to
soll
give
in
some
Richtung
help. There's the My Guide
Bedürfnisse
project
internationaler
that
Studierende. Aber
is
da kann
also
man
taking
sicherlich
into
noch immer mehr
account
tun.
the
Ich glaube, es ist auch immer
needs of
hilfreich, auch für
international
solche
students. But
Initiativen und Kampagnen,
of
dass wenn Sie
course, we
Sachen
can do
sehen, die
more.
wo man noch
And
besser informieren
whenever
müsste
you
oder wo Sie
see a lack
Defizite
of
sehen,
information,
dass Sie da
whenever
auch ein
you
Feedback geben
see
und
a
sagen, wo man
deficit,
aus
then
Ihrer Sicht noch
please let us have
nachbessern
your
sollte
feedback
und
and let us know
wo es dann auch
what we
Bedarf
could
gibt.
improve.
Ganz herzlichen Dank.
Thank
Ja,
you
wir sind
very
jetzt in diesem
much.
Thema Ansprache, vielleicht auch Information. Herr
Now
Grimm,
we are
wenn
talking
wir
about the
nochmal
topic of
auf Sie
information.
zurückkommen,
Mr. Grimm, coming back to you.
es mangelt ja häufig auch bei Erstakademikerinnen und Erstakademikern Ex-Akademiker nicht an der Bereitschaft, ins Ausland zu gehen, sondern manchmal eben auch an
I
der
think
Aussprache.
there's
Vielleicht
no
auch
lack
an
of
Bewerbungsprozessen, die
willingness to
Förderorganisationen, vielleicht auch
study
von
abroad
Hochschulen,
on
vergeben auch
the
eigene
part
Stipendien,
of first
Promo-Stipendien
generation
und.
graduates or students.
Was kann an diesen
So
Bewerbungsprozessen, an der Ansprache
how can the
problematisch sein?
application
Was erleben Sie da? Was für ein
processes
Feedback bekommen Sie?
be
Und worauf
improved? What are
sollten
the
Hochschulen,
problems?
aber
What is
eben
the
auch
feedback that you
Förderorganisationen wie
have
der
received, and what
DAAD
should
da achten?
universities and also funding organizations do to improve the processes? Well, this is maybe an easy question, but it's not easy to answer this question. I know that many representatives of the universities are here today, and I know that they have some kind of possibility to offer assistance, and they can also reach out to these people to help them overcome the hurdles, so they can really reach out in a targeted manner to these people, telling them you're the first person in your family who is a student, now you want to go abroad. There's a guide for you or an FNQ section to help you out. And we are also talking to the universities on behalf of the students and encourage them to share the best practices. There are a lot of scholarships and other ways of support if you want to study abroad. Back then, I did not know that. So at the first level, studying abroad is very exciting for everybody, and it takes a lot of organizational effort. You have to find out what the partner university is. You have to coordinate it with your own university, and especially for the group that I am representing today, the group of first generation academics, on top of all of this, also have to find their way in. So first of all, the DAAD or other funding organizations should be more transparent and direct in their outreach. They already have some services on offer, but these services are not always received by the right target group. It is a very complex and structural topic. That was the first point. Secondly, the universities could also be more direct in their outreach. And the third point is that it does make sense for universities to use initiatives like Applicate and cooperate with them. Or Arbeiterkind is another initiative. They have a lot of knowledge that they are ready to share with them, and Speed Up Buddy as well has a lot of experience, because we're very close to the selection and application process. We know exactly what it's like to be an applicant, and things are not as clearly as you might think. And in concluding, let me add that I think they have really good intentions. There's a lot of potential. However, it is important that we talk to each other even more. So the discussion has to be brought to the center. We have to discuss with the target group and with the people who enable the target group to go abroad. So I know this is a very we have a lot of structural problems, but if we achieve to have such a dialogue, it will be easier to enable the target group to go abroad. Thank you very much, Mr. Grimm. I totally agree with you. I know that we have thought a lot about how we can change the way we contact the target groups, whether we're doing the right thing, whether we are stigmatizing certain groups by picking them out, and maybe the group doesn't even want that to focus on itself. So we really have to talk to the target groups more to find out what they need, how they want to be contacted, and how it feels for them. So thank you very much for your input. Mr. Kaffenberger, what about your target group? Have you made similar experiences in your
eigentlich müssten natürlich Förderungen so ausgestaltet sein, dass sie alle ansprechen. Da bräuchten wir eigentlich keine speziellen Ansprachen. Das muss ja normal sein, alle mit an Bord zu bringen und eben Programme und
go
Initiativen
without saying that
inklusiv zu gestalten.
everybody
Aber wir wissen eben,
is
das ist
included,
doch ein
but we
schwieriger
do
Weg
know
dahin.
that it is
Was
still difficult
können wir
in
da
reality.
tun?
So what can we
Wie
do?
sehen Sie das?
What is your point of view?
Wir können Sie,
Jetzt
genau,
aber.
jetzt können wir Sie
Genau,
halten.
ja, einfach stumm schalten. Auch.
Now we can hear you.
Genau. Ja, ich denke, da ist schon einiges an Entwicklung auch wahrzunehmen. Ich würde so zwei, drei Punkte vielleicht
There has
herausheben.
already been made some
Frau
progress.
Julia
I would like to
Koch, die
pick
heute
out
Morgen
two
auch
different
berichtet hat.
points.
ein
In the
Beispiel, das
morning,
auch ganz
we
wichtig ist,
had
weil im
this
Bereich
testimonial
Behinderung und Behinderung eben immer auch
by
Leute zu haben,
Julia, a
die die
student
allergrößte
with
Mehrheit, ich
chronic
glaube
illness. And we have to
96%
be
der
aware that
Studierenden sieht man die Beeinträchtigung
in
nicht auf den ersten Blick.
96% of the cases, you do not see that the students have a disability. We have a lot of somatic or mental illnesses. These are students who need medical medication and healthcare in the host country, and we always have to focus on this large group.
Auch bei aller Ambivalenz natürlich sage ich es und so weiter oder sage ich es nicht.
We always have to think about whether or not this should be pointed out, because of course there is the risk of stigmatization. But we always have to keep an eye on the entire group. And the second point I'd like to mention is that we have to talk about funding options at a very early stage, already in the first or second semester. And we always have to point out that there is targeted specific advice available. Not everybody who has a chronic illness will want to ask questions at such an information meeting. Maybe they want to talk about this in private only. So it is very important to have one contact person, because we're dealing with sensitive information and you do not want to have to repeat your story again and again. And in concluding, I'd like to say something addressed to the funding programs. Erasmus is a good example, because the target group of people with invisible disabilities is also taken into account by Erasmus, and that is extremely important. And it is also important that it doesn't take a lot of red tape, and that the extra costs that come when you have a disability are covered. So we have already found solutions.
Ja, das ist tatsächlich ein Problem, das weiß ich selber, kann ich auch für den DAAD berichten.
I can assure you that this is really a problem.
Gebühren können nur abgerechnet werden, wenn jemand tatsächlich aktiv in der Förderung ist. Das ist wirklich ein schwieriges Thema. Das klingt
pay
so
for
banal,
things if somebody
aber
has already
das ist leider nicht.
entered
wissen, dass
this
das weiterhin Thema ist, das wir
scholarship
verfolgen
program. We do know that this is a problem.
Ja,
We have to work on
da
this.
gibt's eine weitere Wortmeldung.
There's another
Lane
question
Pfeiler,
or
ich weiß es gar
another
nicht. Es gibt
comment.
einfach.
Lane Pfeiler. Yeah, my name is Cynthia Lane Pfeiler, but Lane is also okay.
Genau, ich habe eben jetzt in den letzten zwei Beiträgen, die jetzt, oder bei den letzten Personen, die gerade darüber gesprochen haben, nochmal reflektiert für mich, wie bin ich denn
contributions
geworden? Wie
made me
denn erlebt?
think about how I experienced this process, and it might be interesting for many of you to know what the students think about when they hear about Erasmus. So thinking back, I can say that many students have a very positive and optimistic approach to Erasmus, and most of them are quite open when it comes to Erasmus. And the universities try at different meetings to discuss how you can afford such semester abroad. At the university in Munich, a lot of flyers with information about studying abroad were distributed, so there was some kind of awareness. So the overall feeling was, yes, that's something that we can do and it's something good. What is lacking, however, is
die Beratung und die
the
Hilfe zu bekommen,
support or
es
the
nicht einfach nur ein,
advice.
ach, es gibt ja das Erasmus Plus und man bekommt
So
da
it's not
jetzt
enough to
anscheinend
say there's the
monatlich Geld
Erasmus
und man
Plus
denkt sich so,
program and
ah
you
ja, das
get
klingt ja alles
money
ganz
every
einfach und ganz gut.
month.
Und dann, wenn man
And at
anfängt, das
first,
konkret
it
zu
sounds
planen,
really
merkt
easy and
man,
really
dass der
good. And
Aufwand
once you get
eigentlich
started
immens
with
ist, vor
planning
allem wenn
the
man dann eben
semester
noch
abroad, you find out that
eine
it takes
Vorschulkrankheit
a lot of
mitbringt
time
oder
and that it
die
is not
als
easy.
Erstakademikerin noch
In
andere
particular, if you
Umstände
have a
mitbringt,
chronic
dass
disease,
einfach da
or
Barrieren
if you
sind.
are a
Und
first
wenn die
generation
Barrieren, über die wir ja viel
academic,
gesprochen haben und
so
wo
you
ich
find
hier
out
auch
that there are
die
many obstacles
vorherigen
and
Redner,
hurdles. We have already talked about them earlier.
ich weiß grad nicht mehr
There
genau, wer es
was
fand, den
a
hervorragend fand.
contribution
Wenn man an die
on
Punkte
internationalization and
denkt, und die
diversity,
Beratung
and
und
I
die
think this was a
Botschaft
great
genau das nicht immer
contribution. So if
mitbekommt,
you think
und dann
about
denkt
all
man,
these
ja, das ist
points,
wichtig, aber es ist eben auch nicht alles, weil wir ja eben genau die anderen
it is
Barrieren
important
besprechen,
to know
die
that
das nicht
funding is
inkludieren,
important,
dass
but
man
it's not
das auch schon
everything.
offenlegt, dass man
And
auch
it's
als
important to disclose
Student, Studentin merkt,
this.
okay, es gibt die
As a
Barrieren, die ich
student,
vielleicht auch
you
noch
have to
nicht
know that there
auf
might be some
zentimeter Ebene klar
barriers,
sind, weil natürlich
even
geht
though
das,
I'm
ja,
not
du
yet
brauchst
aware
auch
of
mal
them.
studieren, das klingt
Because
nach
of
einer
course I'd love
tollen
to study
Möglichkeit, das
abroad.
machen
It
viele
sounds
daran auch
like a
viel
great
mittelfiebern.
experience. It
Aber
sounds like
natürlich mit
something
eigenen
I
Barrieren
could
zu
learn a
kämpfen.
lot
Und wenn
from,
man das,
but you're never aware of your own
ich weiß nicht,
barriers.
hätte man das zum
So
Beispiel mehr thematisiert an einer
this should
Hochschulklasse, wo
have
viel über
been
Finanzierung
discussed,
gesprochen
for
wäre,
instance, by the
dann wäre man
universities
vielleicht auch
instead
ein
of just talking
bisschen
about the
sensibler
funding
für das, was
aspect,
man im Blick haben
because
muss
this
oder man
would
fühlt
also
sich dann
raise
in dem
awareness of the things that you
Qualifikationsprozess, wo
have
es
to
wirklich darum
focus
geht,
on.
das zu ermöglichen, nicht
And
so allein und so
then you
voll
would not,
völlig
the
überfordert
students
und
would
dann
not be overwhelmed because they would
vor allem
not
finde
feel
ich das
that
überhaupt eine
alone
tolle
and
Idee, sondern ob das
frustrated,
überhaupt
and they
alles
would not
dann so gut
doubt
wird
whether
und
it's
so
actually a good
versprochen
idea
wird. Also weil ich
and
glaube
whether
wirklich,
things are going to work
Entschuldigung,
out
ein
as
letzter Satz,
promised.
weil ich glaube,
One more
ich bin dann auch
sentence.
fertig, weil ich glaube, für mich war
I
tatsächlich die
think
größte
for me,
Enttäuschung, dass,
the biggest
weil das nicht
disappointment
transparent gemacht wurde,
was that
dass
there was a
einmal
lack of transparency.
im Grant Agreement von Erasmus,
In the
also das
grant
Ganze eigentlich
agreement
nochmal
of
ganz klar drin
Erasmus,
steht, was gemacht werden muss und was man ja
well,
nicht
the
weiß,
entire
da dann
contract
steht,
is included
das ist jetzt die
that you
Summe, die
have
du
to
bekommst.
sign. It said
Und
that's the
davor
amount of money
wird
that
einem
you
aber
will
so
get.
kommuniziert, naja, es gibt so
But
500
before
Euro im
that, they
Monat
had
und
communicated to
naja,
me
wenn
I
man
will
das
have
so
500
für
euros per
vielleicht
month.
5 Monate
So
ungefähr
I
dauert,
thought I'm
dann
going
ist die
to
Summe
study
auch
for
viel
5
kleiner.
months,
Und
and
das
then
wurde nicht
I expected a much
transparent
larger
gemacht. Und dann kommt ja
amount
noch
than
dazu,
I
dass
actually
natürlich jetzt
got.
auch
And
dieser
there's a lack of
Finanzierungsjahr dann in
transparency
die nächsten
regarding
Frühjahr
that.
kommt und in
And
Ratenzahlung
as we
geht. Das sind
already
2 Dinge,
mentioned,
die für mich
the money
überhaupt nicht
is paid
transparent
much
waren.
later and in installments. And these were things
Okay,
that
das
I
muss sich
did
die
not
Frau
know.
Stebner dann im Nachgang nochmal angucken, was im Grant
Okay,
Agreement steht. Aber
so
ansonsten habe ich,
Mrs.
glaube ich,
Stape maybe will tell
verstanden,
us more about the
Sie
grant
wünschen sich
agreement.
auch mehr
But if I
ja,
understood you
authentische
correctly, you would
Erfahrungsberichte, wo auch
like to
eigentlich
have more
Personen,
authentic
mit denen man sprechen kann, die
testimonials.
das
You
vielleicht
would
auch
like
schon
to
mal erlebt
hear
haben und einfach auch
Ja,
from people who
unmittelbar
have
sagen können, was kommt da
experienced the
eigentlich auf
same
mich zu.
thing and who can
ja.
tell you
Also wir
what
haben
to expect.
im Ausland haben wir so ein kleines Modell, ich weiß, in
Well,
den
abroad we
USA
have
haben wir ehemalige
a
Stipendiaten, das sind
model.
dann die
For instance, in the
sogenannten
United States,
DAAD
we have
Ambassadors, die gehen da mit auf
former
Messen und
scholarship
erzählen von ihrem eigenen Auslandsaufenthalt, wie
recipients,
sie das
and
gemacht haben
they
und wie das mit den Ansprechpartnern war.
tell
Vielleicht bräuchten
other
wir sowas stärker dann
students
auch in
about their
Deutschland.
experience. Maybe we should also
Ehemalige,
have this
ja,
in
als wirklich als
Germany,
Mentoren bereitstehen,
Ja.
um auch zu berichten
kind of
davon.
Der
mentoring
Gedanke
program.
ist ja auch in vielen Punkten schon da, aber ich glaube, das ist was wir noch viel mehr verstärken
Yes,
müssen,
I
das
think
in
we
Alumnis mit
have
reinnehmen,
already
also Leute, die
seen
die Erfahrung schon haben.
programs like
Ja.
that, but I think we have
Ja,
to
prima.
increase this, and we really need alumni
Wir haben auch
with
schon ein bisschen so das
experience talking
Thema
about
ja,
what it was like.
Förderung
We already
gestreift.
talked about
Stellt sich auch das,
funding and
die Frage nach
scholarships.
Auswahlverfahren.
So
An
let's
Hochschulen
talk
werden ja
about the
auch
selection
Stipendien vergeben,
process.
aber
Universities are
die
also
Frage des Auswahlverfahrens stellt sich ja auch bei
awarding grants and
Einstellungen, wenn
scholarships,
beispielsweise eine
but the
Nachwuchsstelle
selection
besetzt wird.
process is of course also
Es kommen
an
internationale
important
Bewerbungen ein zu einer
issue in other
Nachwuchsgruppenleitung.
areas, for instance,
Ja,
international
Frau Ittel, gibt
applications,
es
and
so
how
etwas
are
wie ein
they treated?
Anti-Bias-Training
This
in
is in
Braunschweig?
Ittel, at
Wie
Braunschweig
gehen Sie mit
University. Do you
Auswahlverfahren in
have an
Ihrer Hochschule um? Ich
anti-bias
meine,
training, or
vieles
how
läuft
are
ja auch
you
ganz
handling
dezentral.
selection processes
Da
at your
hat man
university?
als Hochschulleitung gar
A
keinen
lot of processes
Zugriff,
are
aber
decentralized,
ist das ein
so
Thema
you
in
have no influence
Braunschweig?
on that. But is this a
Ja
topic at
natürlich, aber an
Braunschweig?
der Technischen Universität
Yes,
ist schon deshalb
definitely. at a technical university, this is, of course, a topic. We do not have many female professors, and that's why we always have to deal with these problems. We have 26% of female professors, which is not bad at all for a technical university. but there's still room for improvement. And I'm talking about gender equality because that's what affects us most. But of course, this also applies to selection processes of professors from abroad. All universities want to be open and they want to be fair in their selection process, but they are nevertheless faced with obstacles. Do all applicants speak English? And do all people in the selection committee speak English? Not everybody who comes from abroad has sufficient command of the English language. So the selection committee maybe does not understand the biography of the person, whether the person has an academic background or not. So there are a lot of different aspects, and we have already introduced an anti-bias program. It will be launched next year, and all new professors will experience this as part of their onboarding process. And we are still discussing whether all heads of selection committees should also go through this training. This is always a delicate question, but we are quite optimistic. So this has nothing to do with the students, but the mechanisms are similar. Thank you very much. This is extremely interesting. We also have started with awareness raising in the selection committees. This is just the first step. But we also do not want to tell people what to do, but it is important to draw some attention to this topic. As you said, there are also some mechanisms resulting in discrimination, and this also applies to scholarships, of course. One of the arguments is always that we have to find the best ones, so excellence is a criterion, but we have to think about what the term excellence means. Does it mean the same in Germany as in a different country? So can the standards that we have here in Germany be met, the standards that we call excellent? This is a very complex topic. Potential and talent and excellence. This is always a difficult question because maybe you should give talented people with a lot of potential the opportunity to become excellent. Maybe they just haven't had the opportunity to fully exploit their potential. This is a very important topic, both at universities and funding organizations. So we are really looking forward to hearing about the results. As you mentioned, there are many different topics, and you talked about internationalization at home, for instance, and I'm sure there are also limits to what can be done. We talked about funding already. As a representative of the university, would you also like to have support from the outside, external support? Because I'm sure there are some things that you cannot solve on your own. Are there any areas where you would like to have some support? We are in a close conversation with the German Research Association. A couple of years ago, they really started focusing on equal opportunities at universities. This was a very successful process, but now it has been changed. So there's a debate going on whether it should be a more structured approach that university really have to take an effort in order to get funding. And this, of course, could also apply to other funding companies. For us, it is always great if the country or the province or the funding organization gives us some kind of guidelines. For instance, 50% of all professors have to be female professors, guidelines like that. But the guidelines do not tell us how to do that. But this is, of course, something that we could use in order to change something at our university. And that's usually quite helpful if we work together with representatives from politics or funding organizations and prepare standards together. And standards are of no use if they cannot be reached. And if we don't get any funding just because we're unable to reach certain standards. So exchange is extremely important in order to change things at universities. Thank you very much. We are slowly coming to an end and we're running out of time, but one more topic I'd like to touch upon. At the DAAD, we get feedback from international students that have problems with the integration, that it is hard to make connections with German students, for instance. We already heard an example earlier. We heard about the study from the Erasmus program. Of course, there's also discrimination in our society, and universities are also part of our society, so discrimination may happen at universities as well. The feedback that we got is that most of the discrimination takes place outside universities, but there is, of course, also discrimination going on at universities. 34% of the students said that they felt treated differently from the students of the host country, and they said that they felt discriminated against. Mr. Ashish, have you received feedback like that from international students? Yes, of course. Discrimination takes place not only at universities. We also heard from students that they are discriminated against in society, whether they go out for a drink or whether they're at the university. They clearly experienced racism on the basis of their language or their accent. After COVID, we also got a lot of feedback from international students telling us that Asian students really suffered from discrimination. So yes, unfortunately, racism still exists, not only on the part of the students, but also on the part of teachers and professors. And we heard of different incidents at university. So this is a topic that we will not be able to tackle overnight, so it will take time, but we try to monitor teachers every year to fight against racism. That's something we do every year all over the country, and as a campaign against racism that we have launched. I would like to add something. I think it is very important at universities to dispel the myth that university is free from discrimination because it's about higher education. It is important to raise awareness. Of course, there are always some people who feel insecure maybe, or who discriminate against other people or people who suffer from this discrimination, because university reflects our society. So it is very important to raise awareness of the fact that there is discrimination at universities. There are many studies to prove that, but we really want to fight against this. It's important to ensure transparency and to continue fighting against this. Isabel, please. I would like to add to what Mrs. Ittel said regarding excellence. We always said diversity is to compensate for disadvantages. The mindset at universities in Germany are hard to change. There's a variety of different perspectives, and that's what is needed in order to have excellence, but we have not come that far yet. I think anti-racism and anti-discrimination is extremely important, but this gives power to those people who said, well, we have equal opportunities and now we have to deal with diversity. We hope it is going to be over soon. No, we have a huge potential, and the more diverse people are, the harder this process will be. But this has to be combined with excellence as well. It is, of course, important to build bridges. It is important to give money to those who need it, but we also have to make sure that those people who think if we take everyone, our level will be will deteriorate. We have to also address those people. Thank you very much, Isabel, for this interesting closing remark. We share your opinion here at the DAAD. Excellence can only be created if there is diversity, and we have to support that, and we have to continue working on that. Now, I would like to thank all of you for this interesting discussion. Thank you to the panelists for their contributions. Now, I would like to give back to Ms. Gallos, and we are already coming to an end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this exciting discussion and for your questions from the fishbowl, from the empty chair that was reserved for you, and for all the links in the chat as additional information regarding all the topics that we have mentioned. So you can do a lot of research and follow-up work. Thank you, Ms. Klüsener, for facilitating this discussion, for dealing with the exciting questions and buzzwords in the last hour.